It's time for some hostile therapy. All right, welcome back to Hostile Therapy with your host, Big Red. And I've got a guest on the show who has a very interesting story he's going to tell about. And I'm going to ask him hopefully some deep questions, maybe not too deep, because I don't want him to seek out therapy where he has to pay to go to after this. So hopefully we can keep this a little lighthearted, not too deep. We'll be good though. He is Kevin D. Hofmann. He's a speaker, a trainer, and author of the book Grown Up Black in White, which is a very interesting title. And he works in schools, K through 12, universities, an organization to help bring about diversity and inclusion to the people who work in those places. Welcome, Kevin Hofmann.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, man. Now, if you could, man, if you start off, start off from the beginning if you want and give us a little information about yourself. Well, first, let's just ask, how did you come to this profession to go through these different places to help bring about diversity and inclusion?
Well, it came through just living life. So I was born in 1967, 2 weeks after the riots in Detroit. And so I am the product of an affair between my white mother and black father.
Mm-hmm.
They worked together in one of the plants in the Detroit area in the late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Both happily married, just to two different people.
Right.
And so, and I always say context is so important. So I was, again, born 2 weeks after, the riots that changed Detroit forever. And those riots came about because the black community had enough of the horrible treatment that they were getting from the predominantly white police force,
mm-hmm.
which 53 years later sounds a whole lot. It sounds really familiar.
Yeah. Some things never change.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so I was born into that environment where I'm this biracial kid, kind of, born into this shameful, family, and then immediately adopted by a white family. My father was a Lutheran minister, was adopted by him, his wife, and I have two brothers and a sister who are biological to my adoptive parents.
Mm-hmm.
And that really started my story. When I went home to that home when I was 3 months old. And at that time, they lived in a suburb of Detroit, Dearborn, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And Dearborn at that time in the late 60s was considered a closed community, which meant people of color weren't welcome in that community. Mm-hmm. I kind of got in on a technicality because I wasn't a family. I was only one person.
Right.
But that community did not want me there. The church didn't want me as part of the church. And Dearborn, the community, didn't want me there. So much so that when I was 11 months old, we woke up to a cross burning in our front yard.
Right.
And that began this crazy life of living with this white family. We stayed in that white neighborhood for another 2 years. And then when I was 3 years old, my parents moved to Detroit. And I grew up from age 3 to 18. I was always around kids that looked like me. We lived in a black neighborhood for a while and then moved to a white neighborhood later on.
What in the world, and I was looking at that the other day, what in the world could a church actually say that we don't want this biracial kid or, anybody that doesn't look like us? Was there something scriptural that they came up with to say, well, it says here that he shouldn't be in this church? What did they say? What was their excuse?
There was none. So what they did is soon after I was brought into the church, then they started sweating my father about his job performance.
Mm-hmm.
And in a meeting, he finally just said, okay, what's this really about?
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to say he lacked the Holy Spirit, which was just code for, we're trying to get rid of you. We're trying to fire you.
Mm-hmm.
So they started down this process of trying to fire my father.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was no basis behind it except it was just straight racist. Yeah, I couldn't justify it. And then they would do what a lot of people do, which is, treat people horribly because of race, and
Right.
then act like that's not the cause. And that's what they did. So when he would ask them, is this about, the fact that I brought this child of color into the congregation? And then they would go, oh, no, 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 no. But that's what it was.
I don't even see how, if you're in a religion that's supposed to be inclusive,
Yeah, exactly.
about love, how
Yeah.
it's not, we're not even talking about adult. We're talking about an innocent child.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't
Yeah.
know what's going on. I mean, it's bad if it's an adult, but I could see a little bit more reason to it. But we're talking about a child that's done nothing. You saying what,
Yeah.
2, 3 years old?
Yeah.
Like you don't even know what black and white is.
Yeah. Right. Right.
You're just trying to make it to kindergarten at that point,
Exactly.
and they're kicking a child out essentially.
Yeah, and my mother shared with me that all the white women in the church would come to her, and they asked her over and over again. And again, I was only 2 or 3, and
Mm.
they would ask her, "Well, who's he going to grow up and date?" But
Mm.
what they were really saying was, "Man, I hope you're not around long enough where he grows up to date my daughter."
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
for real.
Okay. I saw eventually that yes, you mentioned earlier that you end up moving to a more all predominantly black neighborhood, and
Yeah,
they did that for you for you to be around people that look like you.
right.
But while it was good for you and you got to experience black culture, your sister and brother who were white didn't have the greatest experience in that, especially your brother.
Right. Yeah. So I have 2 brothers, and I have a brother that's 10 months older than me. And yeah, I remember several times him being chased home and harassed by the black kids in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something about human nature that we always kind of pick on the different ones. So
Right.
they were the different ones in that neighborhood, so they got picked on.
Mm-hmm.
My sister, not as much, I think, because she was a girl
Yeah.
and she just rolled with it better. Um, yeah, and I think my one brother especially, I think he really, unfortunately, when they would chase him home, he would of course he would get upset and cry, and he'd give them exactly what they wanted.
Right. Right.
Uh, yeah, my other brother, they chased him home once, and he turned around, and
Mm.
that was the end of that. you know.
Well, one thing I want to talk to you about is how there's a different lingo when you're at home and then when you go to work.
Mhm.
And I wanted to ask, did you have a different type of code talk when you were with your family or around white people versus being around black people? Did you talk a certain way? Because okay, I'll be accepted if I or act like this, I'll be accepted more here. And if I talk and act like this, I'll be accepted here. Were you able to jump into one world and jump into the other and be safe either way?
Yeah, so that was the thing. I was fortunate that ever since I can remember, I was always around black kids, and so
Yeah.
I became part of that culture. Uh, and really didn't notice a big difference until when I was 8 years old. My dad gets a promotion and we move again, but now we're still in Detroit, 2 miles away from the old house, but now we're in an all-white neighborhood. Um, and so, yeah, I had to do that code switching a lot, which was, talk a certain way with my black friends and then switch it up in that white neighborhood. The coolest thing was, though, that because Detroit was changing so fast after the riots, Detroit became very black very quickly because all the white people were leaving the city and going and living in the suburbs. And so even the white kids that I was hanging around with in the white neighborhood, we were all so influenced by this city that was largely black. So as I gained closer relationship with these white kids in that white neighborhood, we all kind of talked the same, which was we were, mimicking the
Yeah.
black community, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, man, when I was little, especially in grade school, I just didn't want those kids to look at me like I was a fraud or fake.
Right.
They knew I was living with, this white family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked it really hard at just doing what I could to fit in. Because I knew I couldn't pass as white. And,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and in Detroit was so split racially. I mean, even today, there's Black neighborhoods and white neighborhoods and Hispanic neighborhoods, but very rarely do you see diverse neighborhoods still. And that's how it was when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm. I would figure it'd be more inclusive, more up north, Midwestern than it is right where I'm at in North Carolina. I figured it'd be a little bit more different. I remember growing up, and we had probably like a handful of Mexicans in the town. I was in a small town, small town. And it was black and white. When people would say, well, why you gotta make it black and white? It was just black and white. That's what it was. Yeah. And now it's totally different. I mean, now you probably have more Hispanics than probably black and white people put together in that town now. But with that being said, when you don't grow up around certain people and you don't know how, besides what you see on TV, do you think that's where racism or bad thoughts about how either white people or black people come up from? Is just lack of experience?
Yeah. I think I often talk about, I was so fortunate that I grew up in that black neighborhood because I got to see the many different types of black. Like, all black people aren't the same.
I'm glad.
And so I saw good black people and bad black people. I saw smart black people and not so smart black people. And I'm so thankful for that, because if I would have had to have relied on 1970s TV to tell me what black was, I would have been walking around like George Jefferson, Fred Sanford, and J.J. Evans. And they were all the same character. Wow. They were all the jive talking, smart aleck dude. Yeah, exactly. So I was so fortunate to see, okay, black people can be just a wide range of things. And I agree with you. I think if we all just had, it's easier to hate something you don't understand or can't relate to.
Right.
Yeah, just putting people in contact with different people, I think, gives them a better understanding, definitely.
This is why this was such a huge deal when Obama became president, more so than what people on the outside just don't understand, is just seeing another side.
Yeah.
And not just for them, for us.
Yes.
Because we also see those images, and sometimes we are monolithic in what we think we can be, and to see him up there, to be in the highest job in the land, the highest job damn near in the world.
Right.
It's like, wow, we can do that too. We can do other things. We don't have to do music. We don't have to be in movies, or we don't have to be certain characters. We actually can play. When you used to see a black person play a president on a movie or something, and the first thing that's coming to mind for some reason is Fifth Element. I don't know why. Debo played the president in that movie. Weird. But it's no longer make-believe. It's something that can actually happen.
Yeah, I remember we took our kids to the inauguration, the first inauguration for Obama.
Mm-hmm.
The day after the inauguration, we went by the White House, and we were standing outside the White House. And I remember thinking, wow, they are in there now.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought I would ever see that. And now my kids have that potential, where for me, I never thought about that. It just wasn't in the cards in my mind, because I'd never seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I remember standing outside the White House just crying like a child, because I was thinking, man, they've opened up so much for the little black boys and girls now, which it was, you're right. People don't really understand the depth of what that meant.
Yeah.
And then for him to go through it without any scandal, them catching him in anything was amazing. Right. Because they were looking for every little thing.
But the thing with that too is, it seems like, I guess now the last 12 years, not to say that racism wasn't here before, or it just died down and then rose back up. It seemed like it started becoming braver to come back out when he first got in office in, I mean, I messed up the year, 2008.
Yeah.
Then second term, and then it exponentially, I think racists got even louder when Trump came in.
Yes. Yeah.
It just seems like it started there. Like for the ones who didn't like Obama, then when Trump came in, it's like, okay, now we got somebody we can be louder with and really express our opinions with. Before we kind of had to toe the line, but we said a little slick stuff every now and then. Like the guy that was in Congress, you lie. You remember that guy?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That would never have happened. Never would have happened.
No. And you're right. It just, in the response to Obama was Trump. It was it was a bunch of people being very upset with the fact that there was this person of color in the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump tapped into all that, man.
There's a question I want to ask you. Okay, yeah, you said your mother is white, right? Your father's black. Did you ever have like a guilt trip? Because you say yourself, you call yourself black, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever have like a guilt trip and say, maybe I shouldn't call myself that because I feel like I'm discounting my mother into this conversation?
No,
No.
because it had a lot to do with the time I grew up. Again, there was a white community and a black community, and there was nothing in between.
Mm-hmm.
There was no biracial community.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know I was biracial till I was 20.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I always identified as black. And that, I've done a lot of speaking with universities, and I got into it once with a young student, biracial student, and he was upset with me because I don't identify as biracial.
Right.
And it's just a choice. I don't really think, I don't have a whole lot of guilt about, how I'm not really denying my mother.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know as soon as I walk out the door, if I get pulled over, the police aren't going to ask me, are you biracial? You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
You're good.
So, yeah.
You're biracial. You're good.
Yeah.
That's not gonna matter. I'm like, and again, back to Obama. Nobody was caring if he was biracial or not.
Right.
To the people who are hating him and having effigies of him being hung somewhere.
Exactly.
Nobody, well, he's a biracial. Yeah, leave him alone. It's good.
Yeah.
Here's another question I got for you. What age do you think kids usually take on discriminatory qualities of their parents?
Man, that's a great question. And I've done a lot of studying of how kids develop and how they see race at different ages.
Mm-hmm.
And so, studies will tell you that by 7 or 8, kids, basically white kids, will use the N-word against children of color in a way they do it to hurt.
Yeah.
And so I get this all the time with schools where they want to tell me, black parents come in because they're upset because their child was called a nigger in school.
Right.
And the response from the school is always, or the white kid's parent is, well, he didn't know what he was saying. And I tell them right away, that's not true. By 7 or 8, they know exactly what they're saying. They know that is really the atom bomb when it comes to insults, especially for people of color. Yeah. And you can drop that because there's no response equal to that. Mm-hmm. And so, I think by 7 or 8, kids are using that. They understand. They might not understand it totally, but they know it's a very offensive word to use. And we talk about it all the time, so they know. It was interesting. I was on vacation not too long ago. Mm-hmm. And I was going to get on this elevator. It was me and my wife. I married a black woman. So two black adults about to get on this elevator. The elevator doors open, and there's this little white boy standing in the middle of the door. He was not more than 7 or 8. And he would not move. And so we walked around him, not to cause a scene, but I remember thinking about that the rest of the vacation, thinking, somehow this child, by the time he is 7 or 8, he has been sent the message that he does not have to move for a person of color.
Hmm.
And which is crazy because most schools and most parents will say, okay, we're not even going to talk about race until 8 or 10. But all the studies show us that by the time the kids are 7 or 8,
Mm-hmm.
their ideas about race and racism are set and almost impossible to change.
Hmm.
And we try to talk to them at 10, it's too late. They've had 2 or 3 years where their mind is set and it's really hard to change it. So I thought that was interesting that this little 7 or 8-year-old kid had been sent a message by that time that he did not have to move for me. And I got deep with this and said, so then we wonder why, you know, the rich white kids then go off to college and take advantage of women and rape women because their whole life you've taught them they can have anything and everything. Mm-hmm. Everything is at their disposal. And so we talk a lot about this race talk, and we all have, it becomes our responsibility as people of color
our
teach these
responsibility.
people this, but it's not.
Yeah,
and we need to do a better job of educating white parents on how to teach their kids that, yeah, the world does not revolve around you.
Good. Now, see, now you're getting to segue to what I was about to bring up. Mm-hmm. Recently, out here where I'm at, probably maybe about a month ago, and you've seen this example, I'm pretty sure, this year and past years. First of all, I don't understand why do kids just not believe that the internet goes out to the world? There's just
right. Yeah, exactly. You should know better.
Yeah. I honestly, I just don't know, because the video, some kids made some videos in high school, a TikTok video doing blackface. And I haven't heard an apology yet, because usually that's right around the corner. Oh, we didn't know what we were saying. We didn't know what we were doing. Yeah. Usually that's right around the corner. There was one, I think, early this year where it was a girl and a guy. I think they were probably seniors and they were getting ready to go to college. And they made a video. They were dumping something in a sink, racist things in the sink or something. I can't remember what they were doing.
I remember something about that. That's right.
Like one had like watermelon, like this is black people, ingredients. That's what it was, like ingredients to making a black person, and watermelon and some other stuff was in it. And the video became viral, and it's like, I didn't expect it to go viral like that. And, you know, he made me do this, and I don't really believe in this stuff. I'm like, I don't understand in this world. I can kind of understand the 60s, the 70s, 80s, maybe even the 90s. Yeah. But when you have like Zoom now, when you have TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, where everybody sees everybody, and then just schools you can go to where stuff is more inclusive, maybe not all the way in some places, I don't see how you could have those type of thoughts and think too that you won't get caught. It's not like a video you're making in a basement. It's on TikTok. It's pretty popular. Why are there idiots like this right now still existing?
I think it's because, one, you don't see, so that blows up for a second, and then although I heard one of those kids lost a scholarship or a school they applied to, they didn't get to go to.
Mm-hmm. It was a girl.
Yeah, and I think they think, man, if it goes viral, I'm set. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they don't think much past. I think they just see it and say, well, you don't really get in trouble for it. It goes viral. I'll get the clicks. Mm-hmm. So people, kind of dog me for a minute, but then I'll be cool. I don't think
get paid for it though. That's like, at least get
paid
for it.
Pay dearly for it, yeah, and you should.
All right. I just don't. I don't get in this day age, blackface. I almost take it at. I don't want to say I don't take offense to it. Them wearing blackface, I take offense that you can't come up with something different. It's like, come on,
you're right.
You can come up with something different than blackface. That's like over 150 years old. Like, come on, get with the times. Yeah. Come up with something more original, racist. If you're gonna come up, right. It's not as old. If you
don't be a lazy racist,
right? Is that too much to ask? But okay, here's the thing. Now you do diversity in training, and I imagine you do it for a wider range of ages. Is there? And I know you said earlier where like 7, 10. It's almost like it's too far gone. They gotten this programmed into them. Is there an age where you think it's just like there ain't no coming back from that? I can't do anything about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've worked with the school district for 3 or 4 years, and the biggest struggle we have is in the high school.
Yeah,
and it's because those kids have been taught a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's really difficult. And yeah, I've been contemplating, is it too, and I think it is too late in high school. And I think, quite honestly, the time is better served dealing with the younger kids so that we can raise them up so that they won't have issues in the future in the high school. But I also say, too, to the high school, it's important for those kids because they're about to go into the world. Yeah. And everybody thinks diversity is just for people of color or the LGBT community. Right. But it's not. And yeah, and I challenge the schools I go into, and I say, what kind of kid do you want to graduate from your high school? Do you want this to be a well-rounded kid that can go into pretty much any environment and get along? Or do you want them to just be successful in an all-white environment? And so, so high school, the main focus for me there is trying to get them to just be respectful. And one of the biggest speeches that I do is called Give Me 3 Feet, which is just, and this is the challenge I give the high schools, is we have to create an environment where the kid with the Black Lives Matter t-shirt and the kid with the Make America Great Again hat can coexist. Okay. And so that just means
that sounds
like they each get to be whoever they want to be in their own 3 feet. And so your 3 feet isn't going to impact my 3 feet. I don't have to try and convince you to come to my side, because if those are so extreme, and we always argue, those sides always argue, and I'm like, there's no sense. Y'all are never going to bring the other to your side. You're way too far apart. And so that's what I try to tell the schools is give the kids the freedom to be who they are with their own 3 feet, but they've got to be respectful of the 3 feet next to them as well.
Let me ask you, is 3 feet because is that like the average length of an arm and a fist to the face, and maybe they can't reach them? I was like,
no, the 3 feet came when I was coming up in Detroit. We would play basketball in the backyard, and the backyards were really small. And so we had this rule, which was when you took the ball out, you were usually hemmed up against the fence trying to get the ball in.
Okay.
And so the rule was, give me 3 feet. And if you didn't give them 3 feet, it was within their right to just take the ball and throw it at you, because you had to give them that 3 feet to get it in. So I tell that story, and then I say, we just need to give these kids 3 feet. Just give them 3 feet who they're going to be.
Interesting, because that's kind of what I would like to do on this show is I like to hear other people's opinions, and regardless if I agree with it or not. Like if I had a Klan member on here, not that I would, maybe I will, who knows. I want to hear why he thinks the way he does, you know, and as long as he doesn't touch me, he doesn't, put a cross in my yard or anything, we're good. I want to hear why. And maybe I can figure out how to get to him and say, okay, maybe you're just angry because of some issues you had with your dad or something. You're just putting it off on other people. Yeah. I don't like cancel culture. That's one other thing I don't like. Because cancel culture, regardless of the reason you have for believing what you believe in, you don't get to learn anything. You don't get to learn why that person got to that person. They didn't inherently become evil, if that's what you think they are. They learned that from somebody or something, or developed that rhetoric from, I don't know, past president or something. Yeah. I want to learn how you got there, and then maybe I can fix it. Just as like if you were fixing some sort of disease, you can't say everything that requires a cough coming out of you is the common code. It could be anything. Like nowadays, could be COVID. But you can't say this is a cold just because you cough. You got to go down different things that are bothering you, and then you can figure out what the disease is, and then you can prescribe something for it. And maybe you can't. Maybe it's terminal. Maybe you can't do anything about it. But at least you can listen and hear what the problem is. So I like the 3 feet thing where you saying, Black Lives Matter versus Trump supporters or Make America Great Again. Same thing. You at least get to hear out what they're going to say. You may never change their mind, but at least there's no violence involved.
Yeah, and the second part of what I tell them too is, don't have these deep conversations with people you're not in a relationship with. That's why most of the Facebook conversations don't work. You're arguing with strangers. It's just worthless. Don't do it. Now, if you see something in a person and you can be like, okay, we could get along. Like, quite honestly, my best friend doesn't vote the way I do.
Right.
And that ain't easy, but we just don't talk about that. And so, but I'm in a relationship with him so that I understand, okay, I can invest in him in other areas. We just can't talk about that.
Right.
And so anytime, and I get sucked into those Facebook arguments all the time, and I got to remind myself, you will never hear from this person, see this person ever again. This is futile. Don't do it.
Exactly. And the biggest thing that's bad about it is you can leave the argument and they can come and check on what you said a day later and then respond. And now you have to respond and you're stuck in a rabbit hole. Yes, I got away from those things. I couldn't do it. I even have some people on my page that I do not agree with anything they say. But you know what? I keep them on there to see how they talk and their friends talk. And I'm like, okay, now I understand why they support and why they think this person is the way he is. Or if they're talking about Trump or if they're talking about Biden or just anybody, maybe OJ. Maybe they're talking about OJ or something. This is why they think this way. And then I can come up with a counter argument if I meet someone in person, not on Facebook. I am not arguing with anybody on Facebook more than 3 sentences. If I can't get it out in 3 sentences, I'm done.
Yeah, exactly.
Woo, boy, yeah, you just made my heart rate rise just even thinking about it.
That's the truth, yeah.
All right, let me switch it up a little bit. Back to your childhood, man. Okay, did you ever have grown up? Because I've seen this example a lot for adoptive children. They have very loving parents. They have a good childhood. Everything seems good until they turn like 13, and then the hormones come out, and then they kind of realize, okay, this is not my real family. They love me. They're doing everything they can for me, but this is not my biological family. And then they start thinking about, why did my birth parents let me go, or why did they let me get adopted? And sometimes they want to go back. Did you ever have any of that growing up, or was your childhood pretty good with your parents, your adoptive parents?
It was good, but we didn't talk about adoption or race in my household. And so I remember but I thought a lot about my biological mother. And I would have these like crazy fantasies that she would one day find me. And really, it was simple. It was as simple for me as she would find me, she'd come see me, see how I was doing, basically drop off some money and leave. I never had that idea of going and running away and living with her. So I thought about my mother, and probably my biggest struggle, like at 13 or 14, was trying to figure out what Black was. And so, in my head, I joke about this now, but in my head, I would say, I'm the blackest Black man. And I would try to be what I thought Black was. And I remember, and this was back, especially in high school, like in the 80s, we wore the medallions. So we would have these medallions around our necks in the shape of Africa.
Yeah, I remember those.
Pro-Africa.
I remember.
Yeah. So I would wear that, and my favorite shirt was this black. Yeah. And I had this favorite shirt. It was black, and it had the continent of Africa on it. And then on the back, it said, "It's a Black thing. You wouldn't understand." And I would wear that that around my white parents' house all the time. And
What does that mean?
yeah, exactly. And on top of that, uh, that's when gangster rap had just had just started. And I was in a rap group with about 3 or 4 of my other friends. And we would sit at my dining room table and say these raps back and forth to each other. And they were all anti-establishment, anti-white, and at times just really just horrible things we were saying. And my mother would be in the kitchen cooking dinner.
Oh, not you, Mom.
Yeah. And so me and my mom had done a panel once. So there's this group that had read the book and they wanted me and my mom to come and kind of answer questions. So we came, and one of the women in the group and that story's in the book about me being in this rap group.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the women asked my mom, so what did you think about that, him and his rap group? And my mom, and again, we never talked about race growing up. And my mom says, like a typical mom, she says, well, I wish they would have cleaned up the language a little, but they had every right to be so angry.
Right.
And that blew me away. I was like 40 something when she shared that. And I thought, man, my mom got it a lot more than I thought she did. Like she understood this inequality and understood we had a right to be mad and angry. And really that was just like, that's my fear now for kids today was when we grew up in the 80s and 90s, we had people like Public Enemy, all these great poets, quite honestly, but they showed us how constructively we could kind of let all that anger and pain go.
Right.
I don't know what kids have similar to that today, which is kind of, that scares me. I mean, we had great leaders like Chuck D, man, all those dudes, KRS-One, and I just thought, so that was great. And so I got so involved in all that music because I thought they were speaking. We all did because they were speaking about our experiences. Yeah, so that was powerful to grow up at that time.
Yeah, that was the conscious rap era, like mid 80s, very early 90s. Like I said, Rest Development. That's one of my favorite groups. I've been listening to them a lot lately again.
Sorry, Hill, all that.
Let me ask you this question then. I don't know how to even answer it or ask this question. You remember the controversy? This happened earlier this year with, I think it was named Jessica Krug. You've heard of her? Okay. Let's just say she was another Rachel Dolezal. She was a professor, I think, at Columbus University, and I think she majored in African American studies, all that type thing, just kind of like her. And then she recently, she was going to get outed, and she came and got ahead of the story and said, okay, I faked being black all this time, and yes, I'm really a white woman. And I guess my question is, what is your opinion on that? Because it almost seems like there are some black people in our community that will say, you're trying too hard to be black, or if you go to the other side, if you speak a certain way, you're talking white. You're trying to be too white or whatever. And it almost seems like the same thing, except there seems like a mental disability. But what do you think about their situation? And then talk about, I guess, have you ever been through that situation yourself where someone said, okay, you're trying too hard to be black, or why are you trying to be black for, or you're talking white, or you're talking black? Have you ever experienced that yourself?
Yeah, so like Rachel Dolezal, that was interesting because when she came out, she identified herself as transracial, which was funny to me in the community I belong to because, so I'm considered a transracial adoptee. Child of color that was adopted by a white family. That's transracial. That's a transracial adoption. And so when she came out and said that and tried to steal our term, we were kind of salty about that. And she was trying to say it like transsexual, that I can be fluid in races, and I don't think you can. And good luck doing that without upsetting basically the black community. and it's hard not to see. I mean, because she could put it on and off, and we don't have that opportunity.
Right.
So she could go to her NAACP meeting as this woman of color, and then take it all off and go to the store and be fine. And so
she kind of did that once.
Oh yeah.
I think she stole some scholarships.
Yes.
From Black people. They were supposed to be for Black people.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Yeah. So I have an issue with that. And then, I don't know how you carry that off without that offending, in this particular instance, the Black community. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest you do that at all. And growing up, I always had that where it was, my Black friends would always say, you talk proper.
Yeah.
Which is, code for you sound white.
Right.
But and that was a struggle when I was growing up. But then I learned too, that really to be successful, you have to have that ability to code switch. You have to have that ability to turn it on when you have to. And that's, unfortunately, that's just how the world is.
Yeah.
And so, that what I got dogged for coming up has helped me, especially, I'm a speaker. So that helps. So I used to get that. I used to hate when that came up. Because it was, I just didn't want those Black, because I knew, man, if I don't connect with the Black community, I'm going to be out here all alone because the white community is not going to take me.
Because I'm sure it's much harder to get in the white community than it is the Black community. Because, I don't know, you have to jump through some hoops with fire to get in the white community, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
And you just talk a certain way to get with the Black community. But I will say that is a fault that we do have in the Black community, is thinking success by being smart is a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's something we got to weed out. And again, it's from us, something we think monolithic, like we are just one type of person. We can be many things. Yeah. We do not have to be someone that just can't read, or somebody that's just playing basketball. We are more than that. We have very intelligent people that, especially when you think about where it used to be illegal to read, and you had people like Booker T. Washington that came up to be who he was.
Yeah, exactly.
Du Bois, who came up to be who he was. And you could be lynched. You could be killed.
Yeah, for reading.
For even, not even just reading, just being uppity, as they call it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Like, you owe it to your ancestors to be smart and go to college and be successful. You don't have to go to college, but just be successful and be intelligent. Be the best person you can be of yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's why people like Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, who are just very bright people. You just get to see, again, just a different shade of Black, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, one of the things that I just got finished watching the series Lovecraft Country, I thought, man, what a great thing that they did. And man, I was a victim of this. So I'm watching it, and, Hippolyta, who is like one of the most powerful women in that series, solves the puzzle with math. And it ain't easy. I mean, they show her going through all these equations and stuff. And I thought, man, in my head, I'm thinking, who's going to come along and help her? Mm-hmm. And then she did it on her own. And I thought, man, we need to have more shows like that.
Right.
Where I thought it was really cool that family is very, very intelligent. Back in that time, too. I thought that was pretty powerful, the way they wrote that in there.
Yeah, everybody is like a scientist or detective on that show.
Exactly. Which we've never been shown that.
No.
In that light.
Let me I had this discussion the other week. This is a little off topic, but it's kind of on topic. I was talking about Donald Trump, right? And my question was, the question actually delivered to me was, do I think Trump is racist? And initially, most people's answer is like, yeah, he's probably racist. Mm-hmm. I think I've come to a conclusion. I don't think he's racist, and I'll tell you why. I think he's narcissistic, and I think he'll depend on any race that'll help him out when it comes to his, to come to himself. It just tends to be more white people than it does black people. But I think he looks out for himself more than anything.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know if I want to say he's racist anymore. He does racist things, but I think he looks for who can help out him become number one in whatever he's seeking out to do. Just tends to be more white people than it does black people.
Yeah, he definitely uses people to get what he wants.
Yeah. He cares about green, I think, more than he does any other color.
Yeah. But I do see in him, mentally, he thinks we're well below him. Just
right.
by the way he taught, like, I cannot stand when he says those blacks. Because to me, that's him saying, one, we're all the same.
Right.
So he'll do that all the time. Like, here's my black friend. My one black friend. He said that before, or he'll call us those blacks. Or he thinks we're all poor and live in Chicago. Like, he always brings that up. That we're these violent, Neanderthals that live in Chicago.
That's what everybody brings up. When police violence happens, that's what everyone brings up. What about those shootings in Chicago? I live in North Carolina. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
I live hundreds of miles, maybe thousands of miles away from Chicago. I don't know anybody in Chicago. I know some people from Chicago, not in Chicago. Why you keep bringing up Chicago like it's the Mecca of the world? It is not Africa. Why?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And we are well aware of the issues that our community has with Chicago. And just because we're trying to fight against police brutality doesn't mean we've taken our eye off Chicago. But that's always interesting. They'll bring that up and then say, well, how come Black Lives Matter doesn't do anything about Chicago? Mm-hmm. And I was on a podcast not too long ago, and I was paired up with another guy, white guy, who was a Blue Lives Matter guy.
Oh, okay.
And so he brought that up. How come they don't do anything in Chicago? And I said, that would be like going to Home Depot and looking for bread and getting upset with Home Depot because they don't sell bread. That's not what they do.
I'm hungry.
Black Lives Matter is about police brutality. It's not about Chicago. There are groups that are trying to deal with Chicago. It ain't Black Lives Matter. And I just thought, and they get everyone. Most people don't know what Black Lives Matter is. Yeah. And so they just dump on them for everything. And they're not responsible for that. But yeah, you get that a lot, or we get the black on black crime.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
go ahead. I was going to say, what I shoot back with? I'm like, how come you haven't done anything about black people?
Exactly. Why is that just our problem? You know, like the heroin thing isn't just your problem. That's the country's problem.
Right.
So when it has to do with us, it becomes our problem to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them too, a scientist pointed this out to me once, what I thought was really interesting. He said, any organisms will respond this way. If you put them in limited space with limited resources, they will turn on each other to survive.
Right.
So how about you change the conditions? And it's not that we're inherently evil or violent, but you've put us in some pretty bad conditions. And that's what's happening. And criminals are lazy. You're not going to travel 10 miles away to rob somebody. You're going to travel next door and take what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And so this whole black on black crime thing, it's just a distraction. And white people steal from white people because we're usually all in our own pockets.
Mm-hmm. But nobody brings that part of it. Why don't white?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just black people doing it. Why are y'all killing your own for?
Yeah.
We're over here eating crackers and cheese.
Yeah.
Y'all won't leave us alone.
Yeah.
But if it's just black on black crime, why are you afraid of us then? That means you're safe.
Yeah, exactly. I don't get nothing against you.
That's why you ain't worried about us, because you're safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, here's another question then. Do you think we are more diverse now than when you were growing up?
We're more diverse, but the system is still the same.
Yeah.
So everyone always says by 2040, white people were the minorities in the United States and things will change. If you don't change the system that really, man, someone just said it beautifully recently. They said, this is not only a system not for us, it's against us.
Yeah.
And if you don't change the system, it won't matter if we outnumber white people, because the system is set to make it very difficult for us to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to change that first. So I think we're more diverse, but we still haven't addressed it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been our issue. I mean, you could almost set your clock to when we have riots in this country. They used to happen about every 20 years. In 67 it happened, and then in 93 it happened with Rodney King, and then we went to 2014 with Ferguson, and now, man, it's happening more frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the cycle we go through, which is just, we, the people of color, have enough. And until we address some of those deep-seated issues, it's not going to go away.
Do you feel like, I feel like they are trying to make things more diverse, but in a pandering way? After George Floyd was killed, and you saw all these statutes all of a sudden being brought down because all of a sudden they realized it's bad, and then they canceled the Golden Girls episode for her allegedly wearing blackface. Do you think there's a change around the bend, or do you think they're just pandering right now? It's kind of what I always think about with racism now. I don't know if it's actually has died down as much. I always say lawsuits is the reason why you don't hear about it as much, because business owners don't want to lose money, so they'll fire somebody in a heartbeat because they're not trying to get money taken out of their pockets. Yeah. So people keep quiet more than they used to. But do you think it's more pandering now, or do you think people are actually changing their mentality about Black people or anybody of color?
I think so. What I look at is the people in charge. And what I saw with George Floyd, I never saw before. Mm-hmm. They always talk about the blue line. Like, so when one cop would do something bad, nobody would ever speak out against him. Mm-hmm. And then in this March, in April, I was seeing police commissioners and mayors saying what a horrible thing that police department did. And I've never seen that. Mm-hmm. And so that gave me hope, where I was like, okay, maybe this is finally changing. And I think, too, it was the perfect storm where we were all inside, didn't have much to do. So everyone saw that 8 minutes and 46 seconds, a whole lot more people saw that than would have if we weren't quarantined.
Yeah.
And I thought, this may be the one thing that finally tips it over. And I referred back to the 60s. Like, the civil rights movement became very popular, and a lot of people joined the bandwagon because every night when they would turn on their TVs, they would see these horrible scenes of Black people being attacked by German shepherds or hosed down by these powerful hoses. And at that point, we got enough white people to help us or to join with us to make some change.
Yeah.
And it was frustrating for us, I'm sure, in the 60s, because it was behavior we had said was happening decades before.
Yeah.
And I liken the whole George Floyd video and all the videos that you see now, because everyone always has their cell phone with them. So now you get to see what we've spent the last 50 years telling you is happening to us. Yeah. And I think there are more people now finally saying, man, we can do a whole lot better than this. Yeah. And we've got to make change. And so that means, I think, one, we had to get Trump out of office. He was, I think, in 2 or 3 years, most everyone will be like, man, that was just traumatic going through those 4 years, and always being, it was just like this for 4 straight years.
Yeah. I feel like somebody's gonna say, "What movie did that? When did that movie come out?" I'm like, "Nah, that was
Yeah. That's the embarrassing thing is our grandchildren will be like, what? Explain this to me. How did this happen?
a reality show." Yes, for real. This guy was firing people for fun on TV.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
I I always say the same thing you say though. It was a perfect storm with the pandemic. There was no sports, and
Yeah.
you were bombarded with news stories. I mean, because we also had three things. Well, I say three things. This is my triangle of things. We had Ahmaud Arbery, we had Breonna
Yeah.
Taylor, and then we had George Floyd. It was like back to back to back.
Yeah.
And then that was it. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And to what you were saying about the 60s, and this is what I felt was brilliant with Martin Luther King. He used the power of the media, and there was nothing probably but about maybe 3 channels back then. So you had to see it. And he did this he already knew on these marches that they were going to get beaten.
Yeah, he's going to take a beat down.
Yeah, he knew that ahead of time.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like now, you know, we have marches and stuff like that, and they don't do that now. Again, I think it's because of lawsuits, and they're afraid that the police department is going to be defunded, so they won't do that probably as much. It has happened. It happened during, you know, that month of May and June where people were protesting and stuff in certain cities, but not like in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm afraid of, though, is if they don't make change now, who knows when we're going to have another pandemic where we're stuck at home.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not like this is the first police killing caught on tape, caught on a phone. We've had a lot of them caught on the phone. We've had kids killed on. Yeah. Tamir Rice.
Yeah, here in Cleveland. Yeah. Exactly.
And nothing was, you know, there was a little bit of violence, but not like there is now. There wasn't like this big call for change like there is now.
Yeah.
And I tell people it's because the NBA was gone, the NFL was gone, the NBA is back, the NFL is back, and I'm kind of feeling like we're starting to sway back away from it again. You know, I don't hear about it. I'm not hearing about the Ahmaud Arbery trial as much as I was. I'm not hearing about the George Floyd trial. It's on TV, but we're distracted again. And I'm afraid, really afraid that once the trial does happen, I don't know if he's going to be found guilty or not guilty, but if he's found not guilty, I don't know if we're going to react with the same fervor that we had back in May. Right. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I think, in my personal opinion, is Biden was a better candidate for our interests. But what we can't do is give him the pass just because he got in.
Right.
I think step one was getting him in. Step two is really pressuring him to do right by us, especially how he got in. I mean, he won Michigan because of Detroit. He won Pennsylvania because of Philly.
Right.
You gotta recognize the clout that we brought to it, and that means, you gotta do stuff to make a lot of this right.
Yeah, we got to pressure the lower levels too.
Yes,
you know,
definitely.
The mayor, the governor, the police part. I think that's also something where we fall prey and to letting the president potentially handle the problems, and it's not all about him. You know, he's one of the more powerful people, but there's a checks and balances that we got to hit up too. We got to hit up.
Yeah, do it all. Yep. Yeah.
So I want to ask you another question. At these seminars that you do, is there any key thing that you tell your audience to help the people become more inclusive to their fellow man of a different race?
Yeah, probably the biggest thing is, because it's the biggest frustration for me as a person of color, is just because I have an experience, or you have an experience, or I have an experience that you don't have.
Right.
So I go to the store and I think I'm racially profiled. So then I come to a white person, I go, yeah, this happened to me. And then because they've never had that experience,
Mm-hmm.
they want to debate me on why I got it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my biggest messages is, just because you didn't have the experience doesn't mean my experience isn't valid.
Right.
So you've got to not not try and dismiss. And I said a lot of times, you know, when someone has gone through something like that, they're coming to you because they're in pain. And your response is then to tell them or convince them why they're wrong, which that's not a compassionate response.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just say, just be compassionate and logical. If someone comes to you and they're hurting, then just be there to listen to them.
Right.
Don't sit there and debate why you don't think it happened. And we get that all the time. Man, I can't tell you how many arguments I've gotten into over some of those videos that we're talking about. Like, I got into it with a cousin of mine, a white cousin of mine, who wanted to tell me that we were talking about the Philando Castillo murder, where he was shot by the cop and his girlfriend sent it out through Facebook Live.
Yeah, he was reaching
So
his permit reaching for his permit, right? He was trying to find his gun.
Yeah, he said, I got a gun on me. Let me get you my permit. And he reached and the guy shot him.
Yeah.
And my cousin wanted to argue, well, you don't know what happened before that. And I said, I don't need to know what happened before that.
What was
and then yeah. And then they want to tell you how much weed this guy ever smoked in his life.
Doesn't matter.
And, you know, the traffic tickets he had. And I'm like, that has nothing to do with it. I shouldn't be dead after a traffic stop.
Right.
And if you're a compassionate, logical individual, you should be able to understand that.
Yes. There's no way you can tell me if that was your child and he was actually following the law. He's supposed to get your gun permit.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's following the law. There's no way you can tell me, like, you're just me, okay, well, my kid's dead, but, you know, he should have been reaching for that gun permit.
Yeah, exactly.
Or he should have been arguing with the cop. So I'm cool with it. Let's go to the real tomorrow. There's no way you would think that. And it's only because you do not see the value in that life.
Right.
I think that's probably the biggest thing where I guess anybody would be racist or not like another person because you don't see the value in their life.
Yeah. And that's really hard for people to get. Like, yeah, the whole Black Lives Matter. People can't wrap their head around that we're talking about a life. Like, that's all we're talking about. And they want to go into all these different tangents of, you know, well, all lives matter. Yeah. But we don't do that any other sense. You know, like the NFL, they celebrate breast cancer every October.
Right.
But you don't have the Alzheimer people out there going, wow, what about us? We matter.
It's because they can't remember to do bad joke. Bad joke. Okay, well, back to that point, their argument is I don't want to have to think about politics, you know, with Kaepernick kneeling in the flag. I don't want to have to think about politics. I just want to enjoy my game. Well, why would you want to think about breast cancer? I mean, that's a deadly disease. Who wants to think about someone potentially dying and going through therapy before a football game? And you wearing cleats that are pink and shirts that are pink, you have to think about that the entire game.
Yeah.
And here you got a guy who's kneeling, which I still don't understand how a kneel is offensive. You're married, right?
Yeah.
How did you propose to your wife?
Yeah, knelt as a sign of respect. Yeah, exactly. You know? Yeah.
Let's see. I'm trying to think of the singer. Damn, I can't think of his name. God, why I cannot think of the guy's name? Guy from the 80s. That's not helping. Why I can't think of his name? I'll think of it later. But someone who gets knighted. I can't think of his name right now. I'll think of it later. But someone who
Elton John got knighted.
Elton John. Dang, I couldn't think of it. Yeah. I was trying to think of a song. But when someone becomes knighted, what do? Do they do jumping jacks before they get knighted? They do what? They kneel. Kneel, Sir Elton John. It's a sign of respect. How is that offensive to kneel in front of a flag?
Exactly. Yeah.
Never.
No, it wasn't. And I think history will show that Kaepernick will be a hero. Just like, everyone says they love Muhammad Ali.
That's a good
They
point.
love Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
But man, back in the 60s, they weren't loving on those guys
Did
at
not.
all.
Did not. You're right. Absolutely right. Okay. Here's one. This is the last segment I'm gonna do, man. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask you. Well, no, I'm not gonna ask you. I'm gonna give you a word, and based off that word, I want you to tell me how that word makes you feel. You can say it in a sentence, a paragraph, whatever comes to your mind. I want you to tell me how the word makes you feel.
Okay.
Okay. Your first word is love. How does that word make you feel?
Hopeful.
Hopeful. Okay.
Yeah, I always think of the quote from Martin Luther King, you can't use hate to drive out hate. Only love can do that.
It's a good quote. I like that quote. Okay. Your next word, race.
Difficult. Yeah, I think, one of my biggest missions is to try and figure out how we can reconcile, the races that I'm made up of. And man, yeah, this last 4 years has made that real difficult. I think we just all think so differently. So that's been my biggest struggle, is how do we kind of reconcile this? And it's not always easy.
I always say I feel like music brings people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think it's interesting, like when I came up, even in Detroit, we were exposed to, rock music and white music.
Mm-hmm.
And so my library of music is huge. It's not only rap and R&B, but it's, Bon Jovi and all this other stuff. And I'm just thinking, man, if you were white, living in a white neighborhood in a white community, you have missed out on so many amazing artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. I think, man, if you could get exposed to that and see what contributions they make, I think there's a way to kind of come together. Definitely.
Yeah, there's nothing like listening to Bon Jovi, and then the other person listen to like, you listen to Bon Jovi too?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
You're actually all right, black guy. All right.
Yeah. Exactly.
I invite you over for a listening party.
Yeah.
All right. Next word. Okay, technically this is 2 words, but 2020.
Exhausting. Man, I didn't know I didn't know how exhausting 2020 was and the last 4 years until Biden had finally won and they were on the stage and Kamala Harris was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was her family and it was just this big, diverse group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, there has not been room for us on that stage in the last 4 years.
Right.
And that hit me. I was just like, wow. I mean, sometimes, man, when you're into something, you're so into it, you don't realize the impact it has on you. Man, it was that Saturday when they were on that stage, I just thought, man, we lived through 4 years of oppression. And it hit me hard, boy. Ooh.
I'm kind of scared though.
I mean, I swear, I've talked to a bunch of my friends and we're all like, man, you can take in more air.
Right.
You can just inhale more. It's just, you can finally breathe.
Man, I don't know, man. Until like January 1st, I don't know. I'm not trusting it, man, because you still got Trump trying to sue these people, man, these states. And it's like maybe one of them will hear him out, and then all of a sudden, like, we found like a boatload of votes, and here we go. That's actually gonna help him win and propel him back 4 more years. I'm like, I'm waiting until January 1st. I'm not saying nothing. I'm not celebrating or doing anything until January 1st. Because 2020 has fooled me too many times.
I'm telling you, man, it's just, it seems like it's been 5 years long. Like, I remember stuff back in March, and I'm like, man, that was just in March?
Right.
That seems like years ago.
Right. Okay. Your last word is future.
hopeful. I think we tend to, in this country, we swing way this way. So some would say when we elected Barack Obama, we swung way this way. And then the response to that was to swing way this way and elect Trump. And I think now we're kind of coming back. I'm hopeful that I think Biden gets it more than most. And I think he's going to be committed to put more people like us on his team. And so I think that's going to make a huge difference. And what people are seeing, which is a trip, is that people of color and women are getting into office more frequently, which, they just did a piece on CNN about that. And so people are going to start sitting up and noticing that we can hold office, that we can get the votes. And I think that's going to change things as well. Like you said, on all levels.
Yeah, hopefully so, man. I'm hoping Biden lives up to at least some of the promises. I don't think no politician can keep every promise, but the main ones that we're seeking, I hope he keeps his promises.
Yeah, like I said, he owes us. He was the one that
definitely.
A 1994 crime bill was no joke, so he played a hand in that.
All right, man. I appreciate you coming on. This again is Kevin Hofmann of the book Growing Up Black and White. Where can people find that book to purchase, man?
Yeah, you can just go to the website, which is growingupblackandwhite.com, or under my name and so my first name is Kevin, last name is Hofmann, HOFMANN.com. So kevinhoffman.com. And you'll see, examples of me speaking on there, my book, the whole nine.
All right. And can they go on there and invite you to their universities or schools or anything?
Oh, yeah. You can contact me through that. Yeah.
Or how's that going now? I mean, is there? I know there's a lot of schools closed nowadays, but have you done a lot of speaking engagements this year?
No, this year got cut way back. Just started. I was just in New Jersey a couple weeks. Yeah, I was in New Jersey on election day, actually.
Okay. I think it'll get close to coming back to some sort of normalcy next year.
Yeah, I was thinking that today. Yeah, next Thanksgiving we should be hopefully closer to. Yeah, man.
Maybe be the complete opposite of 2020. New Year's
resolution. Right.
That's 2020's New Year's resolution, is to be different. Be 2021. Be different.
Yeah, exactly. Man.
All right, man. I appreciate you coming on the show, man. I had fun with you, man. This is a great conversation I had with you, man.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I enjoyed it, definitely.
And I appreciate everybody that came to listen to me and not turn off your radio or turn off your speakers, listening to my voice. I appreciate everybody, every fan I have. And we will see you on the next episode of Hostile Therapy. Peace.